Thanks to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this video.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. Yesterday I had the inspection, so that's the first inspection in the process of getting this renovation done. Bought the house almost 3 years ago now and just now getting around to the inspection for many reasons. But we won't worry about all that right now. I failed the inspection, which I expected, but I just wanted to get that list of things they wanted to see taken care of. Nothing I did was, they didn't consider anything I did wrong, but there were a few things they wanted me to add, and then there were some things I just forgot, like some nail plates over plumbing and a few other small things. So let's just run around real quick. We'll start upstairs. That's where the inspection started. It lasted darn near an hour. I've had inspections last 10 minutes, so that was a pretty long one, but there was this was very involved, how much stuff he had to look at, and then there were a few things that we had to kind of look at and discuss for a while. It's windy today and the windows are wide open, so we might get some wind on the microphone. It's just the way it is. So this is an example of a place where I missed a nail plate. I knew I needed to do it, I just hadn't done it yet. A nail plate being this. So that's just when you go to do drywall to make sure you don't send a screw or a nail at any point in the future, bolt, whatever, just to where the pipe does not get damaged. So that has to be, I believe, code is anything 1.25 inches from the face of the stud or member that it goes through. So in the bathroom, I believe that's all. Some of the things that I'll need to do on insulation that he kind of told me, where I had this wall framed out in front of the existing wall, that was to square things up. That space all down in there has to be tight with insulation, and that's draft prevention, so to where if a fire occurs, you're not feeding air to it, or the fire is stopped when it hits the, just where there's not a void for the fire to pass. The other thing that I had to do is anywhere, and I believe it's just interior walls, anywhere where wires or plumbing goes through the floor, I had to put some of this fire caulking around. So this is just a fireproof grate stuff, so it's specific for this application. And I think it's just interior walls that you have to do this, because your exterior walls or insulated walls, say this wall had a bottom plate and there was a hole drilled through it and a wire going through it, well, this whole thing's going to have insulation going right down there to it, so it's just not a spot where it's an issue. So got to do that. The other thing that I need to do, and I kind of thought of it, but then I didn't know, I don't know, I just didn't really account for it. I need to have all of my waste lines tested. So when they do a test, you basically fill all of them up with water and you check for leaks. And what he wanted to see, what he wants me to do is glue on a 90 right here so they'll turn up. And he said come up about this high, and he said fill it up with water to the top. And I'll do that test before I even call in the inspection, and then just leave it full. So if there's no leaks, he'll come in, he'll check it, and we'll see that that water's just sitting there. I think he has to test it over 20 minutes or something. I don't know. He just has to look at it over a period just to make sure that the level's not dropping, and he'll run around and make sure it's not leaking from anywhere. And it's mainly for leaks in the walls, but also you want to make sure there's no gases escaping anywhere too, but mainly the leaks in the walls. It was something. Oh yeah, my bathroom fans. I forgot to vent them. So you can see right here, there's a little piece that attaches there, and you attach a duct and you go out the side of the house or the roof. I just forgot it. So I need to do that on the upstairs bathroom, downstairs bathroom, and that's it. In here, I will need to insulate, and he suggested that I fur this wall down to be able to add more insulation than a 2x4 ceiling can handle. He left that up to me. I'm probably going to do something. I don't know how much. I'm not going to fur it out to R38. He said as long as I improve on what I have, this is R11. So I could put R15 in the ceiling as is, or I could fur it down 1 inch and 2 inches and put R19 in there, which would be what is going to go in here if I didn't do anything in this room. So another thing I need to do in here, so I added all these 2x6s to get a nice flat plane and stiffen the existing rafters. This particular rafter was rotten off, and I added this new 2x6 here, and then this to act as a rafter tail. It dives out. But this particular one, I hadn't addressed it as far as what bears on that wall, and he caught that, which is a good thing. So he wants me to add a 2x6 at least up to this wire and bolt it or just screw it off somehow to where that is actually bearing this the load of this part of just right now that's basically floating, so it just needs to be sitting on the wall. So he said that that would be fine. So there's just some things like that, not anything in particular that I have to undo, but just some things that I need to add. Everything was okay in here. I did need to add a hanger right there. So I hadn't done it yet because this is a 1.5 inch 2x8, and then this is a full 2 inches, so that doesn't fit the traditional sized hanger like that. So I need to get a 3-ply hanger, and then I'll shim in to make it fit. Just forgot to do that. Wanted to see these tied to something, not just floating in the wall. Wants to see some sort of a stud going right up under this part, because there's a stud over there and this has been split, but this is the way it was, but he said he would just like to see something there. And then the biggest thing is this wall here. So where these joists sit on top of this new wall that I framed up, and then the studs are coming from the upstairs. It's just this whole part of the wall was really silly to start with. I've got to get up in here and add to this, and that's notched out there. Basically, he wants me to add a stud here, and I'm probably going to rip it out of a 2x6 to where once you get down here it flares out and you got more bearing surface here. Wants me to shim under this joist here, because this is doubled up, so this is two of them sistered together. So there's not much bearing surface. You have to have at least 1.5 inches, and it's about 1 inch on this one. But he says if I add it to this one, he said then I'm getting the bearing surface that I need. So I just kind of need to get in here and add some stuff and make some adjustments, and then I'm good. So overall, small things, and there's a few other things on that list that we will address today and tomorrow, and then Monday I will call in the call him back over and hopefully get everything approved and move on to installation.
SimpliSafe is serious home security made simpler. All the protection, but none of the hassle, headaches, or expense of the old school brands. SimpliSafe's lineup includes sensors to cover every window, room, and door. They even have HD security cameras for inside and out, plus great extras like smart locks, video doorbells, water sensors, and more. SimpliSafe.com goes through the process of customizing your system so you get seamless protection that meets your unique needs. Systems ship direct to your door and can be installed in around 30 minutes. Your home will be protected 24/7 by SimpliSafe's professional monitoring service, ready to dispatch police and firefighters in an emergency. All this costs less than $1 per day and is contract free. You can start and stop anytime with no hidden fees. My interest in home security is simple. I have a family, and I wanted our home to have an extra layer of protection beyond my gigantic muscles and cat-like speed. The system was easy to install, requiring no experience. I had it up and running in no time, and you can add sensors to an existing system at any time. I've made 2 changes to my system. The first was additional entryway sensors, and then later a new wireless outdoor security camera. The new camera takes an already great system and extends it outdoors. The ultra-wide 140-degree field of view, 1080p HD resolution, and even a built-in spotlight add another layer of security. Using the SimpliSafe app, you're able to receive alerts and check in on your property anytime using the live view. After using a SimpliSafe system for a couple years, I don't need any convincing, but it's good to know they've been awarded and recommended by experts including PC Mag and Popular Science. They're also trusted by more than 3 million Americans. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit SimpliSafe.com/HomemadeHome to learn more.
Up next, I'll mount these work boxes for the hardwired smoke alarms, meaning that they have electric from the house running from one smoke alarm to the next. I will connect them to a circuit, one of the bedroom lighting circuits. So from one of the light switches, I'll bring up this 12-2 wire, meaning it has a black, a white, and a ground. So you've got the black's the hot, the white is neutral, and the ground is the ground. That's the bare copper wire. So that will go to the first one. And then from any smoke alarms beyond that are going to be connected with a 12-3 wire. So that has a black, a white, and then a red and a ground. So that extra wire is the red wire, and that one will be what interconnects these smoke alarms, where if one goes off, they all go off. So I have 3 upstairs, 1 in each bedroom, 1 in the hall, then we have to have 1 on the main floor, and then 1 in the basement near the panel. little after 11. Been at it all day, so I'm going to call it, be back in the morning, and should have everything done. So again, today's Saturday, tomorrow is Sunday, should be wrapping everything up. I'll call in my inspection on Monday, should have it on Tuesday morning or afternoon. But so today we've gotten most all the major stuff done. There's really nothing hard left. The most involved thing will be running these vents for the bathrooms, which really is not that big of a deal. This one right here is just going to be kind of run. I'll put some duct hanger under it, and it's just going to be a hole saw through the house, through the siding. Then I'll mount the vent on the outside, hook the duct up to that, and that is the same on the second floor. Got all the smoke alarms in, and then what I was doing here is just a combination of the floor joists, the old ones that I sistered onto, and then those studs coming down from the second floor, not having much bearing surface on that new framed wall. So I was just kind of mildly rigging it up, just creating more bearing surface to where the load from that wall is being transferred into the wall above is coming into this one here, and I think it's probably good enough. It was good enough before. It wasn't going to go anywhere. There's really no weight above it, but this increased it. I think it was a good idea that the inspector mentioned to do that. Yeah. Whatever else I did. See y'all in the morning. Had a minor disaster strike. I was just testing the drain lines on the house, which means I plugged it up the closest to the ground as I could with this little bladder thing. It's just called a test ball. You inflate it, and it corks the pipe off. You fill it all up with water, see if it leaks anywhere, and as you can see, there's water everywhere. What I did is right here is the head of a nail. Yesterday when I was doing all that work where I was putting this nail plate up, so to avoid hitting these with a nail, I had a piece of wood in there and I shot in from that other side, and I shot a nail right into my pipe. So it just kind of curled through the wood, and so it was just spraying water. So now what I'm going to do is I need to cut out a section of pipe, put some couplings, and replace it. Right there in the shadow. Right there. Shot the nail in and just split the pipe. But that's why you do this test. I'm actually glad it split the pipe and didn't just poke a hole in it. Don't fill your pipes up testing your waste lines just when the inspector shows up. Have it done beforehand. I'm not sure what the last thing I filmed is, but I got in a huge hurry from the last inspection, having to make some of those corrections. I was doing all of it, and then I saved the plumbing for last, and that was filling all of the waste lines, so all the big PVC lines, the drain lines, up with water. And so I've got a test ball under the house, filled that up, and then I sprung a leak. I think I've already mentioned this, but the leak was right there. Shot a nail through it, so I found a leak there, and then right here where this fitting is inside of this joist, it was dripping water every once in a while. It was a very tiny leak, but it leaked there. And then underneath the floor, this goes down and through a 90, turning to go over here and connect all the rest of the plumbing. There was a little tiny drip there. So drip there, shot a nail through there, and a drip here. I've never done anything like that before. I've never had that much problems with plumbing. And then I'll admit the embarrassing thing. I didn't even glue this joint. So when I was fixing the problem up above it, I was noticing this pipe was so flexible, and I just tugged up on it, and it was just sat in there. There wasn't even primer on the actual pipe. So I never even glued it, and this is why people say things about building permits, but this is why building permits exist. Part of the process reveals that that was an issue. You should always do that test, because if you didn't have to get the building permit, you might just do all this and close it all up and not actually test for the leak. It was a silly thing for me to do it, but it happened. So I was able to get everything put back together, and long story short, I just had the follow-up inspection and I passed it. So we are good to move on. I am going to go over a few things real quick for this video ends. It's probably going to talk a lot right now. But so that's it for the working portion of the video. I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I had to do off camera in a major hurry. I had the inspection scheduled for after lunch, so means she's going to show up anytime from basically 12:30 to 1 or 1:30 at the latest. But I delayed that 2 hours. I called him back and kind of just asked if he could come a little later today. So I was really racing because this. I fixed this problem right here in that vent, and I fixed it. And then it's right after I glued it together, and it was very cold last night. I mean, it was in the 20s pretty much all day long. And people will say that's not cold, but they're not working outside in it all day long in a house with no windows. It's very cold when you have to think right and do stuff all day long. And I don't wear gloves a lot of the times too, because the stuff I'm doing is just too hard to wear it. So you end up getting pretty darn cold. So I just had to roll with it. But after I did that first repair, I only waited like 20 minutes and then filled everything up with water, and it just pushed the glue out, and that started leaking. So I had to redo my repair. So I repaired my repair. The other thing that I had to do in here is he wanted these boxes installed. I was just going to leave my wires loose in the ceiling and then drill the hole, pull the wires through, and then wire everything in and set it all back up in there. But he said he wanted to see the boxes actually connected. No problem. And then he said it might not be a bad idea to temporarily kind of tack the box up in a way that it can be popped loose to pull it over to... I'm using the lights that you just cut a 6-inch hole and the light goes up in there and springs in there, so it needs very little clearance, only probably 3/4 of an inch above the drywall. Again, did the bathroom vents upstairs and downstairs. For the you can see the plugs and everything for filling it all up with water. I'm sorry I didn't show that, but there's really not much to it. You just plug everything up, and then we'll go ahead and go upstairs. Along the way, I'll show you some things. Had to pack the insulation in. Anywhere where air could basically be pulled or fire could, kind of go up through the inside of this around the duct there. The fire is just draft prevention, basically, so it's just fire-related. Any little holes that were sort of in the interior walls, I went ahead and grate stuffed them. All of the holes were the, whatchamacallit, like right there. It's great stuff. Fireproof, great stuff. So, insulation shoved all around. I've got this camera on a setting to where it's a little brighter than normal in case it looks a little blown out at times, but it's to where you can see dark areas. Insulation all stuffed down in the areas where air could travel up through the walls. So yeah, that's what I did. Put the rubber elbow here and put a vertical pipe, and then I've got a hose running out the window down to the spigot, and just filled all the plumbing up to here is how far. He just wanted to see it at least get up to this point. It would really never be flooded up to this point unless something really weird happened, because to get this high would mean water would just be running out of your sinks and any toilets or anything. So this is just to fill everything up, and it is a lot of water to fill all the pipes, keeping in mind that a lot of them are 3 inches in diameter. You know, all the stuff coming from the toilets, the vent up to like here, and then it comes into a smaller pipe, but it's quite a bit of water. It takes a lot longer to fill it up than you think. And some humorous stuff happened. When I was up here, I was like, I didn't have a spigot on the end or whatever, or spray nozzle, and so I like pull it out of there, and I try to fold the hose in half to stop the water, but the hose is too cold to bend, and I'm just sprayed water all over the place. But yeah, so there's one of my repairs. Super messy looking. That's because that is a repair coupling, and they are goofy to use. I do not like using them. but the store did not have the Fernco with the metal wrapped around them, which is what you have to use in walls if you're going to close them up to where mice don't chew them up or something. And then one warning about using these: you can use these in exposed areas. This is just here for just to get this vertical, but like if you're using this, you know, like say you're coming down through a floor and turning, but you have access to this, you're allowed to use them if you have access. But if you ever sent like a sink auger down this, the auger would get in here and just tear this to pieces. So that's one thing to kind of consider if you're ever making repairs, that this is an easy solution, but you have to keep in mind you can't send an auger through this or it can end up eating it up. So what else do we talk about? The joist repair there, rafter repair, that was fine. Got all of the smoke alarms wired in, you saw that. And then I discussed a little bit more about this ceiling with him. And so what he was basically saying about this, you've got the collar ties up there, so the rafters are on an angle and then the collar ties connect it, and that helps the spreading. So when you push down on the ridge beam, so the ridge of the house, it's going to want to push out on that wall because you're basically making the rafters want to go to a, they're going to go like this, whoosh, and it's going to go long, and it's going to want to push out on that wall. This wall's pretty much supported, but that one is not. So those collar ties are what helps that from happening. But what he was saying is you've got collar ties, and I think he said then you've got rafter ties, or whatever they're called, basically a ceiling that would have been in this room. And he said that the code is for that to be in the lower third, so that means basically that this room would have to have a normal ceiling in it. But he said the situation, the lightweight roof, 2x4 framing, the fact that that wall's there, this piece right here is here, and then the span from that wall this way, and from the wall I'm standing on to that one. This is a wide angle, so it makes things look a little bigger, but it's all so small that it's really not that much weight, and it's already been here for so long that he says it's fine. So that's as far as the structure goes. Now when it comes to the insulation, it's got R11 in it right now, so he says it needs to be better than what was here. And since it's a 2x4 void, my minimum is R15, but he recommended I fur this out to put more. I could add, so it's about 3.5 inches to 4 inches now. I'm not sure if these are, I think these are 3.5 inch 2x4s. But if I add 2 inches to this, I can put R19 in the ceiling. But if I get it up to an 8-inch void, I can put the high-density R30 in it. And insulation is one of those things that's going to pay for itself. But then you also have other things to consider. Say you fur this out, meaning basically you just add a strip of wood to the underside, or you could just sister 2x8s or whatever it is you need. Sister whatever size board you would need to get a big enough void to get to whatever insulation you want to use. Well, then you're going to lose your drywall nailing, so you're going to have to go back in there and do blocking between all of your framing and make adjustments, like these ducts are going to have to, the registers are going to have to come down, all of the electric would need to be, well, no, you wouldn't have to relocate the electric up there. That could stay in the same place because you're not going to fur onto those. That's a big enough void to do extra insulation up in there. So I have to consider, I'm at least going to probably do the R19. I don't know if I wanted to go R30 because that's going to lower my ceiling down so much, probably to about right here. So I'd end up with a very minimal room above my windows for trim. And so I think I'm just going to do sort of an in-between. R38 is the code for ceilings anyway, so I'm already below. Not that that has anything to do with anything, but I'm going to pick a happy medium. It was R11 in here before and poorly done at that. So if I step up to R19 done nicely, and then all the other improvements on the house, it's big benefits, big improvements, already. So I think that was it up here. I added the got the vents outside. I did not show that. I will show that. After I did the ventilation for the ducting for the bathroom fan downstairs, I came up and just did this one. It's pretty much the same thing, just slightly different. I used 290s to kind of redirect that, because this is where the outlet is. Redirected back this way, turned, and ended up going out of the house here. I wanted to keep it all in the back of the house, and go out there, but the problem is, look how far the ground is. Back of this house is really high. So where I would come out, I wouldn't be able to put a ladder here on the edge of this roof and come up. It's too far this way, and I don't have a ladder long enough, and I just didn't really want to get that high off the ground for no reason. So I went out of here and tucked that vent right up there in the corner. That was like the only spot it would go, because right here the vent pipe comes up through the wall. Any further this way and I'm in here, so I was barely able to fit it there. So I just drew the hole and cut through and had just enough room. There's the piece. Using those big hole saws with a drill is very scary as well. They grab so easy, and with the clutch on, they don't even work. So you just have to be very, very careful, run it slow, and expect it to grab, and don't hold it in a spot where your fingers are going to get smashed. But you can see where I went out right beside that, the vent pipe. Underneath the side porch is where all of the plumbing exits right here, and that's where it transitions into the cast iron. So one issue that I had, hold on a second, let me get my headlamp on. One issue that I had was it was leaking. This is once it was under pressure. You would never have water really probably coming above here. But once this was full of water and you had all the weight of the water, it was weeping around the joints in the cast iron. And so this gets a caulking in it, which is a natural material that gets put in there first. And then there's this tool that gets wrapped around, and melted lead gets poured in, and that makes a lead seal between cast iron. So if you ever have a cast iron pipe that's been knocked, or if it's loose, you can basically peen that lead. So I just have this metal rod here that's got this little screwdriver-y looking tip, and I take that and I just hammer it in, and it just compresses it. And when you do that, it's just packing it in there tighter and tighter. And so while the whole thing was under pressure, I don't know if you could do it hard enough to crack this cast iron. You probably could if you tried, but I think you're pretty good not to. I mean, that you won't do it. But I was able to just kept doing it until it stopped leaking. And then this one started leaking. So I had to go and do the whole thing to that one. And then, after it sat for like an hour, see? A little spot right there. So I'm going to have to do this one a little bit more in this area. But again, that was when this whole thing is full of water, and this is like after it sat for like an hour with the weight of all the water completely full. So in any normal circumstances, you would never get water coming through right there, but I'll still just kind of put this in here right here and just kind of work back and forth across it a few times, and that will be nice and sealed up. The only other spot you can see right there around this boot, it was leaking just the tiniest bit. Probably would never get any issues here either, because this 3-inch pipe is extending through here, I think to about here. So in any normal use, the water is just going to come straight through and doesn't even touch the cast iron pipe till it gets here, and then it's down the hill. But I think the reason is because I had this loose, and right now this rubber boot is so cold, I can't really compress it that easy. So I think once this is no longer frozen, basically, it's warmed up a little bit, that I'll be able to tighten the straps up. This is the one that comes on it, and then I added this one to see if I could get it to stop, and it really didn't have any effect. So, what else? Here, my test ball. Some of y'all might like to see that. Let me see. And it is exactly what you're thinking of what I'm reaching down into right now. It's not a clean place to be reaching into, but it's been a long time since any of this has been used. Let's see if I can get the ball out. I think these things are kind of neat. Here it comes. Alright, so that is just a little inflatable cylinder. It's got a bicycle style pump on there, and then I've got the extension hose. But I was able to put this down in there and then turn it and shove it up into this pipe, because I couldn't go below it, otherwise the water would just come out this hole. So I had to, this is the lowest point that I could close it up. And so that goes in there, and then this is what keeps it from disappearing. And even that, you know, you could probably rip this thing off and
one thing I noticed too, and I don't know where it's at yet, is this thing was leaking down. So I was losing pressure. So I need to pump it up and see if it was just leaking from the valve or if there's a crack in it somewhere or poked a hole in it. But it's basically just a little inflatable rubber thingy. So pretty much all the work you've seen on this house so far is what it took to get to the point to pass that inspection. So quite a bit on a house like this. There's certain things like the storm door that wouldn't have needed to be on there, and maybe something else, painting the house, the shingles, but pretty much all that is what was required to get to this point. The next inspection is insulation, so just one single task, and then it needs to be inspected, and then after that inspection we'll just be moving towards the final inspection. So to get the insulation done, let's go inside and look at that real quick. So all the exterior walls will get R15, and then the ceilings we've already discussed upstairs. The basement has registers, so that's a heated and cooled space, so that doesn't need to have anything. Part of the basement, this room and this room are mostly insulated. This is not, but again, it's a heated space. You know, you could do it if you wanted to. My other options are to put insulation in the ceilings, so if someone was down here watching TV, it would bother someone upstairs less, or vice versa. This is the floor for the other upstairs bedroom. So this being a kitchen, you know, if you insulated all the floors in the house, you would cut down on the talking. But someone walking around and banging, that's, you know, you got to get into an extra level of insulation for that. But as far as the thermal insulation, R15 in the walls. But what the inspector told me today is that to pass that inspection, I can't leave the windows open like this, obviously. I wouldn't do that anyway. But his suggestion was smart. You know, I've just been using plastic, and this is the third time I've had to put plastic on the windows. I just haven't done it to all of them yet. But he suggested I get a hold of some Tyvek or house wrap type material in general. And he said do house wrap over all the windows, but it needs to be done in a way like you see here, where it's shedding the water outside. So they won't even pass me unless I either have windows or I have these windows wrapped in a way that will not allow water to touch the insulation. So once that insulation is done, last thing to note on that, I just called insulation companies, a couple of them, because I called about windows, and the company that I called says they were 6 months out. So he said they could come talk to me about them tomorrow. He said, but you wouldn't actually get your windows for 28 or so, basically 6 months after you sign a contract to have it done. So that's unacceptable. So I've called a few other places, and I've gotten it down to about 2 to 2.5 months to get windows. So I'm not going to just sit around even for 2.5 months and not do anything until windows are here. So I am going to end up having to wrap them. So I'm probably going to put a Tyvek-like material very well over the windows and go ahead and get the insulation done. I also called an insulation company just to kind of see. They said R15, the one company I called, was about 90 cents per square foot, and R19 was about 70 cents per square foot, and then there were other prices as well. So I'm not sure what that all equates out to yet, but I think it's probably splitting hairs on how much I could go buy it from a place like Lowe's or Home Depot and then still have to do all the work myself, load up a humongous trailer load full of insulation. Basically, these guys would come out, measure the job, give me a firm price, come and do it, and they probably bang it out in a few hours. The fastest I've insulated a house was I had an inspection, and then the inspector left, and I called the inspection in for insulation the next day, and then insulated it over, that night. I may have already mentioned that in this video. So a crew coming in that does it all the time, they probably just put it in so fast, and probably do a better job just because they're more experienced. But yeah, so we'll see about that. I'm going to meet with that guy really soon. And then the window thing, that's just going to have to kind of figure that out. But as soon as so I could have insulation in this house next week and be either doing drywall if I make that mistake, or basically just have this place ready for whoever does the drywall. The drywall guys aren't going to be getting in here any sooner than next week. So that's the cool thing about getting the insulation done by somebody else. I won't have to do it, and it's not going to hold anything up. The windows, that's something else to consider. But this is a very exciting point to be to. It still is a lot of work to go on it, but this is definitely a landmark point in this project to have the approval to move forward. So all of the work that I've done so far, at least in terms of building code / you're doing a renovation on an old house, has cut the mustard. Is that the right phrase? But yeah, so of course, not everything in here is perfect. And maybe if the inspector just crawled over every inch of the whole place, he might point at a few more things. But there's nothing glaring. There's no electrical issues. There's no plumbing issues. The kind of oddness in some of the framing was addressed and, kind of made good enough. And then small things like that, joist up there, needing the hanger, things like that got addressed. This guy was really good about catching things that needed to be caught and being understanding of things that needed a lot of understanding. So yeah, I think that's that. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about building permits. I'm going to attempt to keep this as brief as possible, and I'm no building permit expert. Most of the work I've ever done was with building permits. When I first got started, I did some things without building permits because I really didn't even know what I was supposed to have building permits for, and then I actually went back and got a permit for stuff I'd previously done, not knowing that, and had to get it looked at and passed and all that stuff. So that's something you can do. And to touch on that before I get started, I know someone else that sold a house and then had a home inspection, and the home inspector found work that was done without a permit, but it was done before the owner even owned it. So they had to go back, had to tear out drywall and show things, show electric, make some changes, and then have all that inspected, and then go through the thing of putting the insulation back in the walls, have that looked at, drywall it, and get a final. So that is one reason that you do want to get a permit. You can, first of all, if you don't know what you're doing, you can burn a house down. You can have leaks occur that have to be corrected, or cause you could rot out stuff and not even know. Because you could have a situation where, say your ceiling's not level and it's leaking up in your ceiling. It could be running off and you not notice the leak for a very long time because it's running over into a wall and down through the wall and in a crawl space or a basement, and not show itself on an outside wall, but it could rot stuff out in the meantime, cause a lot of mold issues. What was I getting at? And if you ever intend on selling a house, it could just cause you. I have seen some people do renovations every bit as big or bigger than this one and not do it without permits at all. There's certain times, too, where there's just no way to do what you need to do without getting the permit. And that's usually any time you have to have your electric disconnected. So if you are upgrading your electrical service, say the house has 100 amp, you go into 200 amp, and that's just part of a bigger renovation. If an entire renovation is going on inside of a house, people do that all the time and rewire houses, do everything, and don't get building permits. Even though it's really not that hard to do something right versus doing it wrong. It's just sometimes people are really doing some crappy work inside of a house, and they just don't want to get the permit. They don't want to go through it for some reason. It's really not that big of a deal. I used to be scared of them too, but I'm not anymore. I'd rather just do it the right way, not have to consider have it sort of haunting you, thinking something's going to happen. But if you're ever intending on selling a house, and you have done something crazy like a renovation like this without a building permit, that could be turn into a disaster, and you just not end up being able to sell the house and still have to, get caught for it and all that kind of stuff. So just do it. So as far as a renovation goes, you buy a house like this. There's certain times where you buy a house and you go, I want to upgrade the electric, and that's it. Say the house already has drywalls in it and it's insulated, but it's not up to snuff as far as the electric goes. You want to upgrade the electric. Just rewire the house is what I mean. What you can do in that case, you probably just cut the drywall back and just rewire the house and then patch that drywall just where you wired it. That would be difficult, but you can do that type of thing. And each house is going to vary depending on, because if it's a single-story house, you can sometimes get it done fairly easily. But when you get into two-story houses and you've got joists running in all different directions and you can't snake wires through areas, you got to either get creative or you got to open walls up. And sometimes that's all you have to do. You can open up between two studs and just run up and get all electric upstairs, maybe into an attic, and then drop down through the walls. You can also do surface wiring, and in certain situations that's not that bad looking. Or to go through the trouble of putting it all on the walls, maybe just not worth it in certain situations would be another way of saying it. But so you can go get your permit for just one trade, or in the case of when I did this permit, I just knew that it was going to end up, I was going to end up touching everything in the house. So I just got the permit across the board, and I got it in my name. So where I'm at, they let you do that. There's other places you can't do that, or there may be ways you can own the house and do it, but you need a contractor's license, like the easiest one to get, or the first one you get, whatever that, A license or whatever it is. I can't remember which way they go. So that's the first thing you need to check if you're going to be buying a house and intend on renovating it. You can call your building department. You don't have to tell them who you are or what the address of any house or anything like that. You can just say, I'm interested in buying a house. I'm looking for houses that need to be renovated as a homeowner, that I intend to live in it or I intend to rent it, because those can be two different things the way it's looked at. You can just say, can I renovate a house as the person who's going to live in it, as a homeowner, without having to have a contractor's license or whatever. With that said, sometimes asking a question, they're going to give you a by-the-book answer, but it might not be one that's actually enforced. So what the rule is and what's enforced can be two very different things. And it's like getting your car inspected. When you get a car inspected, there'd be very little cars on the road if they checked every single thing that's on that actual inspection list. And it's the same way with following any rules anywhere. There are the rules, and then there's the rules that are followed and enforced. And so sometimes it might be better to ask someone who's already doing things in your area and just say from their experience, because they might say something like, don't worry about this building permit stuff. They're easy to fool with. Just call them up, talk to so-and-so. He'll explain it to you, and just move forward on it. Don't let it hold things up. Then you've got building departments that can be trickier to work with. The inspector that I work with here is pleasant and nice and works with you and figures things out. Everyone from the person you get when you call all the way up to the head of the department, they're all very nice. They're no one to be afraid of. And then I've dealt with other places, not the city I'm in, but other areas, building departments, and they can be very tricky to work with. I've had it to where it's just like every single thing gets questioned and looked at, and then eventually it all works itself out. But it's just painful along the way. It looks like somebody wanting to exert their power more than work with you to get something figured out. And I'm not somebody who's got any problems with these different people just because of what it says across their uniforms. But when I work with somebody that's hard to work with and somebody easy to work with, I know the difference. And I'm not going to assume that because one is one way that the other one's going to be that way. So that's something I can't answer for you, exactly how your department's going to act. Okay, I'm getting way distracted. We're up to 7-some minutes just on this section. It's going to be a very long video. So in this house, I went in, I got the permit, I got it for everything, and then they factor the permit based on the cost of the job in most places. So there's probably some basic fee for doing it, for dealing with them, and then each part of the building permit can end up getting itemized as well. It just depends on where you're at. So they can be charging an amount for your electrical, your plumbing and stuff. I think here it's like kind of a set percentage, so it's like a tax almost. It's just basically on what you're doing and the value or the cost of doing the job, there's just a flat rate percentage. Then there's other areas where it's very, very expensive. For example, like you renovate a house, or say you just upgrade your electric and your materials are going to cost you $1,000, where you're going to pay a percentage on that $1,000. Now consider a a Walmart gets built, their building permits are not, $40. I mean, it's no telling. I mean, building permits get into tens of thousands of dollars. I think some of them are like $40,000-$50,000 for some of these bigger buildings, and I'm sure they get much higher than that. You build a skyscraper in New York City, your building permit, it is no telling how much people are getting on permits. And then just different areas in the country, you can have a residential area on the East Coast, a residential house being built on the East Coast and a residential house on the West Coast, or just some specific state, and it can be two very different costs and processes in that permit. So with this house, doing general stuff, the permit was just approved on the spot. I went in and I got it and I left. I literally went in, told them what I was doing, filled it out, and then left with the permit, and I could start immediately. But say I was doing something like going to open up an entire wall, or add a bathroom, or add more square footage to the house that was considered like livable square footage, then you get into having to have things approved. And if, say, you're adding a bathroom and you're on a septic tank, for example, then that's going to involve the health department at that point, because they're going to have to see, is your septic tank going to be able to handle this potential extra person that could be living in a house, because septic tanks are rated for bedrooms. And they may even involve, I think, the health department in general, because I think different neighborhoods and stuff can have limits on house sizes and stuff. I could be getting this wrong here, but I think anytime you basically are adding bedrooms to places, it's more than just you got to show them how you're going to do it. They're going to give you permission of whether or not you're going to let you do it. You've got setbacks as well, how far away from the property line. So if you're doing something that's going to edge right up to the property line, you might have to have something surveyed and then have things marked out. Then they come look at it and approve it. So that's getting outside of this place. So for this place, very, very easy. I went down there. I can't remember how much the building permit was, under $100 to do everything. And I think if you end up failing too many times, they can technically charge you per trade, per visit for the inspection. But that's after you failed it a few times. And I think you'd have to really be a jerk for them to do that. You'd probably have to blatantly not do things and not take care of things that they've asked you. But if it's like some honest mistake and you didn't do something right, or you forgot something, I don't think they're not gonna do that to you. Especially, I think, if you're just generally respectful. I find that people that are respectful very rarely have a bunch of crazy stuff happen. And then the people that I see that are complaining about stuff, they're just unpleasant people. And they're seeing someone react to their unpleasantness and thinking that's the unpleasant person, when it's just a reaction to they're just a tough customer. And so that's one of my biggest thing. You don't tick off. You don't want to make, your wife mad. You don't want to make the building inspector mad. Anybody who's going to give you permission to do something, try to keep them happy. Not that I'm good at that. There's times where I'm not as nice as y'all probably think I am in these videos. It's low pressure. I'm just staring at a camera in an empty house right now. When you're actually dealing with somebody, and I had somebody tell me one time on a final inspection on a house that the windows were too small. And I'm like, what do you mean the windows are too small? And they're like, you need bigger windows for in case somebody's diving out of a window because of a fire, basically. And I said, but these are the windows that were in the house before I bought it. This is this was on the $12,000 house. This is a cinder block house with existing openings. They couldn't have made them any bigger without sawing everything open. And then they hit me on the same thing on the interior doors, said the interior doors were too small. And it was this big thing, and it was like, what am I going to do? Rip the doors out, reframe the openings? Drywall was up. This is stuff they should have caught on the rough-in inspection when they were doing the framing. But it didn't work that way, and they were calling me out on it. And then on the door thing, I'm like about to pass out in the floor because they're talking about all the interior doors, and the entire house were basically going to have to be redone. That means the doors that I bought weren't going to work anymore, and I was going to have to redo everything around it. That was even going to affect electrical. I mean, it would have been insane, and I was getting extremely, extremely mad. I was staying very, very calm. I was getting quieter and quieter and quieter, and that's when I'm getting scary. And then I finally it just kind of hit me. And I don't know what the minimum size on the interior doors were, but I said, I said, why would the interior doors need to be bigger than the front door? I said, whatever comes through the front door can fit through any of the interior doors. And I said, so I said the front door and the back door existed already. And they went, oh, yeah, you're right. And it went from, if I wouldn't have said that, it went from they were going to make me replace all the doors in the house, reframe everything. That would have affected so much stuff. And all I said, well, the front door and the back door are smaller than the interior doors. And that's all it took, you know. So that's one of those things about experience. And I think staying calm, because I could have just, you know, yelled a bad word and fell over in the floor, and the guy would have ran, and I would have had to, you know, change all that stuff. But so just kind of stay calm about it. I think the thing too is when the inspector's talking, just listen to them, hear them out, and after they've told you what they like to do, if you don't like what they're saying, and you want to challenge it, you can ask them, you know, say could we consider other ways to work around this? And they'll probably just say, yeah, you know, yeah, we can work on it. What do you have in mind? And then you can kind of troubleshoot with them. For example, in the kitchen, I did that with not wanting to put a ledger strip underneath some of those joists. I told him, you know, I can do that. I said, but for me, when I go to drywall, it's not going to be optimal to have that little, you know, 2x4 drywalled around in the corner. So we figured out that idea to where I could just kind of just do the best I could and add to it. And when he showed up today and he looked at it, he said, that's perfectly fine for, you know, what you need to get out of this. So it went from, I was going to have to do something that you were going to look at forever and it not look as good as it could, versus I thought about it for a second, but let him say everything he wanted to say first and then introduced my thoughts to it. And then he just said, yeah, go ahead and do it. And then I'll look at it when I get back and we'll go from there. And he was perfectly fine with it. And because you don't want to end up in this situation where it's almost like a battle to see, a battle just to see who's going to win, you know, because you've got zero power, you know, when it comes to this type of thing. But this is way too much talking. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I apologize if it got a little long and if it was too much talking, but I'm trying to keep the talking towards the end of the videos, and you can skip out at the point of which I start talking. But I really kind of like this video too, or I say the work I was doing, but considering that I was filming, it kind of reminds me of some of my older videos where I'm just getting a lot of work done and just going from one thing to the next. I don't want to whine about it. Everybody's had a tricky time. But my responsibility levels have just been multiplying over the past couple years, which of course is going to change things. You know, you can't be the same person forever. When I made my first video on this channel, I don't even think I'd gotten married yet. So there's been a lot of changes for me, and my responsibility level was so low. I didn't have to make much money at the time. Now I have to make a lot of money to be able to keep up with everything. So there's a lot of adjustments that have to be made. But I felt like this video kind of got back into something that I had in the past, which I'm pleased about. And so, not that this house is wrapping up, but I can really see the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. And so yeah. So the next video will probably be strictly, if I have the house insulated, the next time you see this house, it will be insulated, and I'll just be walking you through an insulated house, and then we might roll into drywall. If I insulate it, the next video is just going to be me doing insulation. So the next video could be just insulation or insulation and drywall. We're also going to be making, and I say we because I'll probably kind of ask people's opinions on some things, interior finishings from here on out. Everything's going to be basic, so don't get mad at me when it's, you know, not a palace in here. It's going to be basic stuff, but done, you know, as cleanly and as just normal as possible. It's a rental. It's not, you know, some weirdo's custom, super specific style going on in here. It's got to be generic in that people kind of come in and there's really nothing that stands out other than the fact this is nice, new, and clean looking. I think that's the best thing you can do rental. I've been inside some really interesting places, but they were kind of dirty and funky and stuff, and I wouldn't want that, especially if you're considering having children in a house crawling around in somebody's funk in some rental house. So my kind of new, I say new, it's been like this for several years now, and I've probably said it before, but my kind of way I think about rental now, I don't want anything that I wouldn't live in myself. And not that I have some sort of really high standard. The house is, the paint is peeling off my own house on the outside of it, and there's things in the inside that need attention. But I'm talking about location, and I'm talking about just its overall condition, and it's not out of any kind of moral stuff really, but I just don't want to deal with anything that's junky. It just becomes more of a pain for me, and the happier, the more comfortable the tenant is, it's just you're going to benefit from it. And that's the way with most things in life, and the only thing that makes you sound like you're selfless or selfish is how you phrase it. But most everything, the better off other people are that are around you, the better off you're going to be, for many reasons. And it can, the boiling it down to dollars and cents, you're probably going to keep renters longer. If the house is nice, they'll respect it more. If the house is nice, I think you're just going to get better people to start with. If they come in, I guess I'll put it this way. If you have a person that really respects a place, wants something nice, is willing to pay for it, and they walk in and they see a really nice place, you're just entered into a potential market, basically, versus if you've kind of capped yourself because it stopped at a certain point. Now, I could go higher. I could have bought a house in a different place. I could make this place way nicer, but there's also diminishing returns, kind of start to kick in at some point. This house, the $12,000 house, and anything like that, they're appropriate is the best way of looking at it. They're not all they could be, but they're certainly within I think the sweet spot for what they are, where they are, and how much they'll rent to, and being realistic about who you're going to rent to as well. Meaning how long they're going to live there, what their budgets are. I don't know the types of jobs they have that could be income related, or how long they'll be in the area. Some people cater to traveling nurses. Some people, like corporate rentals, they're furnished, ready to go. This place will just be rented out to a normal family is most likely what will happen. Most people that I've ended up renting to have been younger. It's just the way it works out. And the only problem with younger people, like once you get a nice tenant in that's just optimal, and that just means they pay and they don't tear stuff up, they don't seem to stay very long. But I have had tenants stay for a year, do the right thing, and tell the rental management company when they're going to leave, and the rental management company has found somebody to move in like days after the other people left, or within that month, to where you don't even skip a beat with rent. And doing things on your own, that is unheard of. If you do stuff on your own, you're just not going to nail it like that. The rental management companies, their only job is to get a place rented and keep places rented. Now, if there's other things within there, but that's their goal, because they want to make money. And keeping every landlord's places occupied is the only way they're making money. And so they want to deal with the best tenants possible. That means they're not fooling around with evictions. They're not having to make a bunch of phone calls chasing down money. So they're going to do everything they can to benefit you, basically, because they benefit as well. That's what I mean. Everything's sort of reciprocal, I guess you could say. But I'm going on way too long. Maybe I'll re-record this. Maybe I won't. Maybe we'll just go an hour-long video on this one. Let me know. This is not just to try to trick you into commenting like everybody else asks you a random question. They just want you to comment in the comments. But let me know down in the comments below, do you want videos like this? I feel like this one had a good amount of working in it, but to have the tail end of the video be something along these lines. I'm not saying I don't do it every time, but when I do have it in me, is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? I don't see how it's a bad thing. I think if you're saying it's a bad thing, you're just, I don't know. don't know how to move on to the next video, and you're just sitting there bored in what I'm saying, getting more and more angry. But that's it pretty much. Thank you to SimpliSafe for sponsoring the video. It's such a long video. The spot that I put in there about them was quite a while ago, so do go check them out. As always, greatly appreciated. I'm sure by now you all have heard me mention SimpliSafe before, and I'm not saying this to talk about them again more than I am just to, I hope y'all realize how committed they've been to this channel. They've been a sponsor of the channel for a couple of years now, and as you've probably been able to tell, they're pretty much the exclusive sponsor of this channel. So that is, I think, y'all get a lot of credit because clearly you're responding to it. You're clearly clicking on the link and going over, and people are buying their systems and installing them and signing up for the monitoring service and all that. And they've always been pleased. I ask and check and just make sure they're still happy with everything, and they always have been. So I'm glad you all have been responsive to it. I'm very grateful for it because in all these changes that I've had occur throughout the years, that sponsorship is there, and that is supported me and keeping me going. Of course, y'all have seen my videos go from once a week to once a month and back to once a week, and it kind of jumps around. I think the sweet spot for me would be doing 2 a month, but right now that would be a lot. But I think coming up this spring, I think I'll be able to do it. The cold is very tricky to work in, and just got a lot going on right now. So I'm hoping to be more regular, and then I want to do more videos on the other channel, the Homestead Craftsman, as well. So I wanted to start doing a mix. But yeah, greatly appreciate SimpliSafe's sponsorship and support on this channel, and to everyone involved in that sponsorship, thank you. So y'all thank them as well. I think that kind of thing helps, and they probably just like seeing it in general. Makes everybody feel good. You don't have to always think that a big company is some sort of soulless ghoul. It's real people that work for those companies, and they like to feel good about what they're doing too. But that's it. I appreciate it all. Thank you all for watching. We'll see what happens in the next video, which way we go with the insulation, and then moving on to the drywall. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.